Welcome, everyone, to the Betty Eats podcast. I'm so glad that you are here today. And we have a special guest. We are talking to Mira Dessy, and we are going to talk about some emergency preparedness and so many other things. So welcome, Mira. I'm so happy to have you on today. And I know that we have seen each other online and in food writer groups, so it's really wonderful to get to talk to you today. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Betty. I appreciate it. And I have really enjoyed getting to know you better through the food groups. And I love the recipes and what you do. So it's really fun to be on the podcast now. Uh, for myself, my name is Mira Dessy. I'm known as the ingredient guru. And basically what that means, actually, let me grab a copy super quick because it's right here. I wrote this book, The Pantry Principle, How to Read the Label and Understand What's Really in Your Food. I'm a nutrition educator and I help people with chronic health issues to find real food solutions and just to remove the things that are not good for us from their diet. And I also help support people so that they're educated about what's going on. There's so much confusing information out there. And my goal is to do the research so you don't have to.
I love that. And I think that that is such a good point, that there is so much information out there that it is hard to digest and sometimes it's hard to understand. And so that's great that you come at it with that, just that, angle of like, I'll look it up. I'll tell you what's what. So how
And,
did,
part of it,
oh,
oh, sorry. I was just going to
no,
say
no, go
part of
ahead.
it is that some of the confusion also comes from food producers who don't like to give up what they're doing.
Yeah.
One of the fun examples that I like to share with people is how
Mm.
many, many, many years ago, high fructose corn syrup was being, under the gun, and people were talking about how bad it was for you. And the Corn Refiners Association pushed back, and they started all of these
Mm.
commercials. It's like to be, hey, want a popsicle? Oh no, it's got high fructose corn syrup. Really? What's wrong with high fructose corn syrup? And the other person's like, duh, no. And And the answer,
Wow.
so, everything was like made with high fructose corn syrup, like it was a fabulous thing. And it turns out
Yeah.
excessive amounts of fructose are actually really bad for your liver.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they tried to change the name to corn sugar instead of high fructose
Oh.
corn syrup because they thought it would go over
Mm.
better. Luckily, the FDA stood up and said, no, can't do that. And eventually people began to realize that they were indeed wrong about how
Mm.
benign this product was. And now you see so many products that say no HFCS, but it
Right.
took a long time. It took a lot of years for that to happen. And so part
Yeah.
of what I do is stay on top of a lot of these alterations, modifications, and
Mm.
and try to keep track. There's so much happening in the world of food, but I keep track of a lot. I subscribe to over 70 industry newsletters and
Wow.
really run down what they're doing to what you're eating so that you can make a choice that you want to be eating something. And if you choose to eat that,
Mhm.
that is on you. Like I don't tell you
Mhm.
how to eat, but if you don't want to eat that, I tell you how to avoid it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is so important because that education piece, I think, is kind of missing. And so that is really, really important. That's amazing that you do that much research and reading. I mean, the average person, that would be, I think, really difficult to stay on top of, but that's great that that is, I mean, that's like your life's work. So
It is.
yeah,
And let's be honest, I don't read every single newsletter cover to cover or,
sure. Oh, yeah.
every single week, but I definitely am constantly scanning and then I take a deeper dive into certain things and then I, go to PubMed
Mhm.
and look up the science and really
Yeah.
when I write blurbs, it's because I've taken the time to really help you see what they're doing.
Yeah. that deep dive. How did you get started in this? How did you come about? I'm sure there's a story
Yeah,
there.
there is. There is. Thank you for asking. So, weirdly enough, I was not always a nutrition professional. Many,
Mm,
many years ago, I was actually a database administrator for an international research firm.
wow.
And I I was on this journey where I was getting sicker and sicker over time. I wound up being misdiagnosed with IBS, but
Mhm.
my health continued to decline. And eventually I got so sick that I wound up having to leave work.
Um,
I was so ill, I literally could not walk up a flight of stairs without lying down on the landing. Like I had to lie down on the landing and recover, and then I could get up and go to bed. It was really bad. My immune system collapsed. I
mm,
wound up being diagnosed with a lot of different autoimmune disorders.
mm. Wow.
And I had a lot, my joke now is if there was an ist, I had it. Gastroenterologist, cardiologist, endocrinologist, rheumatologist, like I had them all. And I I was getting a lot of medical advice, but I
Mm,
wasn't getting better.
mm,
And I was really struggling. So to like sort of put it in a nutshell, the week that changed my life was the week I went to my endocrinologist who said, there's this medication I want. No, sorry, I went to my rheumatologist who said, there's this medication I want to put you on, but I don't know if your endocrinologist would like it. And you know, I'm a somewhat conflict avoidant person. So I was just kind of go, okay, you're the doctor. And then as I was driving home, I got really upset. I'm like, well, first of all, aren't you both doctors? Don't you talk to each other? And the answer is no, they don't. And and then the other question was, if you're not going to do it, why are you going to tell me? Like,
mm,
how does that help me? And
mhm,
then a few days later, I saw a new to me cardiologist.
mm.
And in his defense, he looked like he just graduated from med school. Like, he's very
Oh,
young. And I thought because he was new to my care, he's going to want to hear my whole story. So I brought my file, I brought everything, I started talking, and he went, Mrs. Dessy, you are getting older. I was 42 years old,
oh,
and this man was ready to consign me to a sofa for the rest of my life. So I went home, picked up the phone, called my insurance company, and I still do occasionally just to the universe apologize to the woman who answered the phone because I was not a nice person. I basically unloaded. And I was like, you are spending tens of thousands of dollars on care and I am not getting better. And, blah, 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 blah. What are you going to do about it?
right.
And they sent me for what's called an executive checkup at the Cleveland Clinic. And an
Mm,
executive checkup is where you have a gateway doctor who manages your care, and they
mm.
send you to lots of different appointments. And every day, all the doctors who talked about you, met you, examined you, whatever, get together like as a team, and
Oh,
they add to the team over a period of 4 or 5 days
hmm.
until everybody has had their say and everybody is heard. And every morning, the gateway doctor tells you what everybody said and sends you off to your next round of appointments. And then at the
Wow.
end, they send you home with uh, a list of things to do.
Hmm.
So the very interesting thing is they changed some of what was happening. Nobody talked to me about my food. And I
Wow.
came home to a friend who gave me a book about artificial color that rocked my world because, I thought we were eating really well. I baked almost all of our bread. I canned and made pickles and jams and all these things, and I cooked from scratch and all of that. But there was still Captain Crunch in my pantry
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
all these other things. And I started going through my pantry and I realized that there was so much artificial color in everything that we were eating. And then I
Oh,
started looking closer at the ingredient panel because who ever looks at that? Unless you become like me. And I was like, what are these other things?
yeah.
And I began to learn how to change my diet. And then at a certain point, went back to school to become a nutrition educator and
Wow.
went from there. So it was quite a journey.
Wow. That is an incredible journey. And so obviously there was a turning point too, as you learned and educated yourself. There was probably a turning point in your health. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Because, well, obviously, I would not be here in front of you if things were
yeah,
still the same. And, the other
yeah.
thing, I'm very grateful. My primary diagnosis was ulcerative colitis, still is actually.
Okay.
But, the last colonoscopy that I had, and I've had a lot of them, said
Mhm.
that there are no more signs of ulceration in my colon. So through changing my diet, through learning how to nourish my body on a deeper level, through lifestyle
Mhm.
changes as well. Lifestyle is so much more important than we realize in terms of how we take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
I was able to resolve that. Now,
Mhm.
does that mean everybody can do that? No, because we are all bio-individual, but I firmly believe that we can
Mhm.
all learn how to nourish our body in a way that supports it as, to the best of its ability.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. So two things really jump out at me. The first one is about how a lot of times doctors, especially specialists, and this is not you know, um, a slam on the medical system, but
Mhm.
it is interesting how a lot of times they are very siloed in terms of the care and the things that they do. And I have seen that even in my own family as well. When a medical issue comes up, it's one specialist doesn't talk to the other, and it's like, guys, shouldn't you be talking to each other? So that is really interesting with your experience with the Cleveland Clinic, that that's actually what they did, and it seemed to be a little more helpful. So that really jumped out at me. And then I think the second thing is about lifestyle changes. I think that that's really underestimated. I was recently reading, I don't know if you know Beth Bollinger. She has a newsletter called Nest Wellness, and she talks a lot about a low glycemic lifestyle, especially as we get older, because our bodies have a hard time with these ups and downs in what we eat. And so her Beth is in her 50s, and so her mother recently started wearing a continuous glucose monitor. And it was so interesting because Beth wears one, and she talks about how it helps her when she develops recipes to see the body's response, or at least her body's response to what she's made. And she talked about how her mom, it's like her eyes were opened because her mom was, like, well, I eat pretty well. I make stuff from scratch. But then she saw how her glucose would spike even with the littlest, like, well, I added creamer to my coffee, or whatever it was. I can't remember. But you think about those little lifestyle changes and, like you said, what a huge difference it can make. And I think that that is really important for people to know because I think how many people would feel so much better and maybe have less trips to the doctor if they just changed a couple things, not huge things, but little things in their life. So, yeah,
And
that
there's
is,
so much that we're not taught about how our bodies function.
oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I went to a school called Bowman College,
Mm,
and one of the things that they talked about there was that we are holistic beings. So we're more than just the sum of our individual parts. We are together, and so learning how to incorporate mindfulness or meditation or prayer or whatever
mhm,
you call it,
mhm,
learning how to make sure that you're tracking your sleep. How well are you pooping? How well are you hydrating your body? Like all of these different things.
mhm.
It's more than just what we eat. And unfortunately, for so many of us, one, and again, I agree with you, no slam against doctors. I've been the recipient of some very wonderful medical
Yeah.
care,
Oh, yeah.
in my lifetime. However, they don't get a lot of nutrition education in medical
Mhm.
school.
Yeah.
So they don't understand how to incorporate that. And
Yeah.
then there's so much that they have to do, that to sit there and say to someone, so how many hours are you sleeping? How good is your sleep? Or those kinds of things. Like they don't even ask you those questions. And so it becomes, dependent on you as the person at the center of all of this to know enough to say to them, what about X, Y, and Z? What about
Mhm.
these things that I'm not doing? Or what about these things that aren't going well for me? And that's really challenging. We're not taught to do that.
Mm.
And sometimes when you say that, like I cannot tell you how many clients I have had over the years, because I've been doing this work almost 20 years. I cannot
Wow.
tell you how many clients, oh my gosh, this is 2026. The end of this year, it will be 20 years. Dang. Um, I cannot tell you how many clients have said to me, you are the first person to tell me how much food makes a difference. Because I tried to talk to my doctor and they go, oh, calories a calorie, like just eat less and exercise more.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not always the answer,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, very true. I know my daughter is actually an RN and she works in a hospital here in Southern California, and that is something that she has said to me from time to time is that, she wishes that there was more nutrition education, and she sees it in the hospital too. Like she says, these people are recovering, and she's like, I can't believe the crap that they're feeding them, in the hospital. She's
Yeah.
like, who's going to feel good eating that? So, yeah, so it is a sad state. Maybe it will change. I don't know, but in the
And
meantime,
so
we have
if
Mira.
she's interested, sorry, just one thing for your daughter. If she's interested, there is an organization called the Holistic Nurses Association,
Oh,
and they
really?
are astonishing. Yes, I run into them at nutrition conferences all the time, and they are very focused on holistic and well-supported care, and they all are nurses.
Wow.
Like they're medical professionals, which I, of course, am not. So
Mm.
that might be an interesting organization for her to check out.
I will definitely let her know about that, because that is, yeah, she has remarked on that a few times. So, yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Wow. So you have this interesting way that you have arrived here. And then you also now write about it, educate people about it, and you also provide recipes as well. And I'm guessing, although tell us how you are inspired for recipes. Are they from a specific trying to address a particular issue, or are they more general, or how do you approach recipes?
That's a great question.
Mm.
I think for me, part of it is I love to play in the kitchen. And I will share that I am like not quite at your level or some of the other people in our group. I
Oh,
do not regularly wind up rolling out recipes. And as a matter of fact, there are times when I have to find volunteers because it's just me and my husband in the house. And he occasionally is like, "Could we be done with this one?"
yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
for testing. Uh, for for me, sometimes it's reading something
Mm.
and just going, wow, that's what an interesting idea. I never thought about, like one of the ones I just posted on my Substack. I never thought about putting tahini in banana bread, but that sounds amazing,
Oh, yeah.
and luckily somebody else did it. But then I start going, what else could I put tahini in? Like I love tahini.
Yeah, me too.
And so it's playing. Occasionally it's because I have a client or someone who in the family maybe who needs to add something to their diet and they're not sure how to do it and they don't like things. And so I'll go and play.
Mm.
My recipes tend to be fairly simple. I
Mhm.
don't use unusual ingredients.
Mhm.
It's, simple and hopefully not too much time in the kitchen because I also recognize that not everybody wants to hang out in the kitchen for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then another thing that happens is I am very fortunate that I live near a farmer's market. I have friends who we share with each other or whatever.
Oh, that's so nice.
And occasionally our eyes are bigger than our stomach, and you got to look at it and go, all right, this bok choy is about to go bad. What am I going to do with it? you know? Um, or so the recent one that I'm working on right now, I have two people testing it for me, so I'm going to see what they say. I went to a restaurant, they served a dish that looked amazing, tasted terrible.
Oh.
And I am like, what a waste of bok choy and mushrooms. Like it's an
Oh
awful dish. It
no.
was so
Oh,
bad. And I'm like, I love both those things. I know I could do better.
Yeah,
And, so I've been playing, I've come up with something and I've asked a couple of people to test it for me to
that's
see what they think.
that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that's great too that you have extra testers and
Yeah.
people who are willing to do that. Because it is so interesting, something that, like you said, I think family sometimes gets this fatigue from from
Mhm.
recipe testing. I know that happens in our household too. So that is nice. Um,
Well, and I'm curious to know like how you come up with your ideas because I know, for example, one of the things I love, oh my gosh, you changed my mind about compound butters. Like
oh,
that was amazing because I'm used to doing them, but it's like, okay, I have, extra fresh herb in the garden, throw it into a butter. But
yeah.
man, you just took it up a notch and threw so many different things in there. And then the ways you serve them is different. Like, I'd love
Oh.
to know how you come up with your ideas as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that, like you were talking about, when you have an excess of something, that seems to be kind of like the mother of invention. I had been given, well, it initially started, I had been given some habanero peppers from a friend that grows them. And I don't buy habaneros that often just because my family, they like spicy, but they don't like super spicy. Um, and just as I've gotten older, I know that I kind of have to back up on the spice too. But I didn't want to waste these beautiful, habaneros. And I thought, what can I do? And I also had some jalapenos lying around that I came off of my little plant. And so I thought, I'm going to throw these into a compound butter. And I still had leftover peppers, but it was great to be able to, throw those in there. And, because it is butter, it kind of tames some of the heat from them as well. And that just kind of got me started down the road of what else can I throw in butter?
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
I had seen, like, I know on Instagram, there is a gal who does these beautiful radish butter terrines, but she's a caterer.
Mm.
And so she does them in these really big pans. And I thought, I would love that, but I will never eat that much butter. So I made them in, smaller little, scaled the recipe down. And so just things like that. And I love bread and butter. So I was always, looking for what would this be good with? And that's kind of how that
Yeah.
whole series came about of compound butters. And I love having like a little, just, I don't know, something fun in the fridge like that. And um, although you do have to be careful that that's not what you slather on your pancakes,
Oh
And it's
my.
like,
Oh,
wait a minute, that's not, those don't go together.
wrong
So,
one.
but it's fun.
That's so fun. Yeah, kitchen, and you know what? Kitchen mishaps actually turn into things sometimes. I
Yes,
have
yes.
had recipes that came out of I made something, it wasn't great, and then I had a whole bunch of it. What can I do to it
Mm,
to make it different? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that's actually really good.
yeah.
So that's kind of fun too. I think it's a willingness to play.
Hmm.
I've learned over the years to restrain myself. And the very first time I make something new, I follow the instructions exactly,
Yeah.
unless it has something that I can't have in it. So for
Mhm.
example, I'm like I have a true food allergy to seafood.
Oh.
So any of the fish sauces or Worcestershire or things like that,
Mhm.
I have to put in an alternative.
Mm.
But otherwise, I follow it exactly. So I know what it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
And then I go, all right, now like let's see what we can do.
Yeah, there's another creator, Peter Barrett. I've had him on the podcast before, and he is definitely one for not throwing food away. And it's like, how can I repurpose this? And he frequently talks about his like overproofing something or some type of a kitchen mistake. And he does the same thing. He'll be like, how can I use this in a different way? And
Rescue.
which is great. I think it's so smart because we are used to just chucking stuff like, oh, in the
Mhm.
trash.
And
When our
I think
ancestors wouldn't have done that.
no,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a great way also to avoid food fatigue. You know,
Yeah.
we raised three kids, plus however many of their friends would show up at mealtime. And
Oh.
I got used to cooking for a lot of people. And now, unless people are visiting, it's just two of us. And so
Mhm.
there are times when you take something, you either make your own TV dinners and shove it in the freezer, or you learn how to turn it into something else.
Mhm.
For example, I mean, this is not one that's going to become a recipe that I'm going to share with everyone, but I recently made a vegetable dish that was great, but turned out to be bigger than I thought. And so,
Mhm.
we had extras, and then I wound up adding tomato paste and sausage, and I was able to modify the herb profile just a little bit so that I could make sort of an Italian stew with it.
Yeah. Oh,
And
fun.
so it allowed us to, finish it without feeling like, oh, this again, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that flavor fatigue is real, I think, too. That's kind of part of the problem with leftovers. It's like we'll eat it once, but then it's like, oh, please, no more. So I think that's really smart. But
Yeah.
well, Mira, it sounds like you have done so many things over the course of your life, and just, thinking back, is there something that you think, gosh, I'm really proud of that, or I'm really happy that I did that, or um, is there something like that that comes to mind?
Honestly, the book, I think that's one of my proudest achievements.
Hmm.
And it, so it came out of discovering that I have this nerdly fascination with the food label and what they do to it. When
Hmm.
I graduated from nutrition school, I thought I wanted to work with families that had someone with ADD, ADHD,
Oh, wow.
except that I kept coming back to what was on the label and eventually just sort of went all in on that, and now focus primarily on what I call gut health and chemical cleanup, learning
Um,
how to nourish ourselves.
mhm.
The book came out of having to say the same things to people all the time. Like I was just repeating myself, and I would sit there and say, if only I had a tape recorder, I'd push button 6, push button 9. And I stomped around for about a year going, why is this so confusing? Why is there not a book on this? And then all of a
Mm,
sudden, I'm a little slow on the uptake. One day I went, oh, wait, I could write a book.
wow.
And then I did. And I'm very proud of the fact that this book is on the curriculum
Mhm.
at a number of different nutrition schools and is also required reading for board certification in holistic nutrition.
Wow.
So yeah,
It's
so like this
incredible.
is right, a enormous achievement. And
Yes.
I regularly still get people who say to me, your book is amazing. Like it's
Wow.
helped me learn so much about what people, because food producers aren't going to tell you. We
Hmm.
don't learn about this in school.
Right.
If you don't have extreme health issues, they don't even have to be extreme. If you don't have regularly bothersome health issues, nobody dives into what they're eating. They just think
Hmm.
they're doing okay. It's not
Hmm.
until you wind up having a problem or someone gives you this book and goes, I think you need to read this, that it becomes new. So like this is probably my well, obviously there are I'm very proud of my children and my
Yeah.
grandchildren and all of that. But in terms of personal achievement, I think this
Mm.
book is probably, and there's more to come. Who knows what'll be next?
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And that's amazing that it is part of a curriculum too, that is required reading. I mean, that's what an amazing achievement that is. That's
Yeah, thank
incredible.
you.
That really
Thank
makes me
you.
want to buy the book now, Mira. I'm like, I need to get this. Oh, well,
So
I
funny.
know that there's other things that you do as well in terms of helping people who have maybe food intolerances or other issues in terms of being prepared as well for, emergency situations or, like we're experiencing now in parts of the country with extreme weather and emergency preparedness too. So let's talk a little bit about that. I actually have your calendar, which has been really such a help to me. I've loved it. So
Thank
how did that come about? Like, how did you think about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I guess I'd like to say that I think emergency preparedness is something that most of us don't think about until after the emergency has happened.
Yeah.
And learning to be a little more proactive takes presence of mind. And then it's like, where do you start?
Mhm.
So I have personally been on this journey simply because of the things that we've gone through in our lives. My husband and I were newlyweds when I was exposed to my first hurricane in Florida. Um, we had moved there as newlyweds, and then all of a sudden one day the neighbor came and knocked on the door and said, "Hurricane's coming. We need to go to the grocery store." And I was
Oh,
like, "What?" Yeah. And then from there we just lived in different places where different things happened. And over the
mhm.
years, I wound up building up this body of knowledge.
Mhm.
And as a holistic nutrition professional, one of the things that I realized is so much of what is touted as emergency preparedness, especially in the realm of food,
Mhm.
is not good for you. I get really upset every year. So I live in Texas now.
Mhm.
Hurricane Alley, we regularly get hurricanes, and it's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, after a hurricane or after a big storm, a derecho or whatever, the big buckets of "don't eat that" show up at the store. And that's those big, black and
Um,
white and red buckets, the
yeah.
134 meals. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of reasons why that bucket is bad for you. One is
Mhm.
the food that's in there, first of all, tastes terrible. And I know people who've eaten it. I personally don't, but I know people who have. As a matter of fact, someone took my class because she went through a hurricane. They ate the bucket, and her husband was like, "We need to get another bucket." And she's like, "Oh no." And I have a class called Real Food in an Emergency. And so she took the class. Um, it also doesn't tell you, it doesn't remind you how much water you need. You need a gallon of water per person per day for drinking and cooking, as long as you're not doing like extreme things with it. But you bring this bucket into your house, you're going to need a lot more water than that. And you have a lot of people in the house, all of a sudden it gets really hard to store that much water. So you have to think about that. The things that are in there also are loaded with preservatives and artificial ingredients and things that are not healthy for us. So I just got to a point where I realized that I needed to be able to help people. The big shift for me was Hurricane Harvey. Our house got flooded. Our daughter's house got flooded. It was like not a great situation. And this was when Facebook started having this whole Facebook Live thing. So it was 2018. And I was on Facebook Live talking to people about what was going on. And I had a number of people saying, "Would you teach me? Like, how do I do this?" So I started putting together preparedness classes. And from there, it just sort of evolved. So now I have this whole thing called the Preparedness Pantry Masterclass. But I also realized people needed somewhere to start. And so the calendar that you have is actually the third one. This is the third year that I've put one together. And every year gets better and better
Wow.
because I add more things, or I realize that there are ways that I can make it easier for people to know what to do. And I put in, emergency holidays, and I put in what's in season or what's a good thing to buy at this time of year to slowly begin to build your stock. This year, I added the What If series. So we imagine a disaster. Pretend the power's out. What are you going to do? Like literally, pretend your power's out for 24 hours. You're not allowed to flip a switch. What do you do?
Yeah.
And this just helps people learn how to do better. So again, that was an eventual journey that came out of personal experience. And really the deepest desire for this is I get very sad when I see people in situations where something happens and they're unprepared, because I feel like the more we know, I can't prepare for every single situation. I mean, God forbid, a lightning strike hits my house and something happens. I can't prepare for that.
Yeah.
However, I can prepare for knowing how to get away if I need to. So we already know where we're going, what we're doing. We
Mhm.
know how we would connect with our family if we need to. There are things that you can do to help calm your level of stress because that also is part of holistic preparedness, that resilience factor and going, oh, there was a big storm last summer. Power was out for days. I think it took the grocery store almost a week to restock. If people didn't have stuff, what do you do? Then you got to drive further and further. Well, how far do you go? What do you do? And how much do you pay? Like it all adds up. When there's a storm, we had a winter storm here in Texas. It got very, very cold and big ice storm and everything. I had people sending me pictures of the grocery store where people were clearing out certain sections of the grocery store. I stayed home. I
Mhm.
want you to be able to stay home and go, I don't need to go into that craziness.
Right.
Because I think when we're surrounded by people who are fearful and overwhelmed and scared, like
Mm.
my heart goes out to you if you feel that way.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be nice to not have to go into that because you're like, I have what I need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is so smart. And that really hits home for me because, I live in Southern California. We have wildfires pretty much every year. And we do
Yeah.
have earthquakes and tremors pretty much all the time. Some we feel, some we don't. And so that is kind of always, top of mind for us in Southern California. And we also have, nuclear reactors in San Onofre that, you always think about, okay, I got to have enough gas in the car so I can drive from here to Arizona. Just little things like that. And I think it's just being prepared. It does, like you said, help you feel a little more settled so that when something does come, you're not freaking out. But I think what I really appreciate about your calendar and I think it's not too late for people to still purchase it, is because it's broken down into bite-sized pieces. Like I don't always remember to maybe rotate the stuff in my pantry or to check and see if I have certain things or, I just don't always think about that. And so I love the little cues each month. There's
Yeah.
a cue of like, hey, pay attention to this. And so I think that's super helpful. And I think it helps people, like you said, start somewhere because the idea of emergency preparedness can be overwhelming. Like, oh, what do I even do? And so,
Right, right. Yeah, I wanted it to be super simple. And it's
mm,
also pretty. Like if I'm going to put a calendar up on the
yes,
wall, I want it to look nice. And so
yes,
I'm really delighted. My oldest daughter actually helped me with the calendar this year. So she put together, the images and the quotes because we have a preparedness quote every month as well, just to remind us. And
yeah,
I
so
think
helpful.
I think the other thing is if you do a little bit at a time,
Mhm,
it's astonishing how much you accomplish without having to try too hard.
mhm,
Even 1 month at the end of a month, if you look back at everything you accomplished in that month,
mhm.
it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it just puts you on firmer footing as well, where
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, like you said, I don't have to rush to the grocery store for X, Y, and Z. So, and it's not even for just emergencies. I mean, sometimes there's like, I want to say they're not even emergencies, but little micro freakouts during the week of, you know, somebody has to go to ER or, if the dog has to go to the vet suddenly and you come home and you think, I don't want to stop anywhere and I don't want to roll through the drive-through. I just want to get home. What do I
Yeah.
have that I can make really quickly and that's still going to feed us and be nourishing and so I think even for those little everyday things it's so helpful. So
I will also share, like, I love when I get people who either take the classes or get the calendar who share
Mm,
things like their experiences with it. And
mm.
so one of my absolute favorites is someone who was literally out of the country
Oh, wow.
and had someone staying at her house taking care of her dog. And
Oh,
this person contacted her and said, "There's a hurricane coming, and I don't know what to do." And she was like, "Got you covered. This is where all these things are." Like, it was so taken care of that she could
amazing.
tell somebody else that they had everything that they needed. I absolutely
Amazing.
love that. And
Yeah.
then I know someone else who told me that because they had been through some of the things that were in the calendar, they had been stocking up, because every month I give you a list of things that I think are good to stock up on,
Hmm.
and how much you stock up on. Like, I'm not saying go out and spend $5,000. Like,
Right.
literally add a little bit every week, whatever you can afford, whatever you're comfortable with.
Hmm.
And uh, somewhere in the summer, if this was last year, her husband was made redundant at his job. And it took him like 2 months to find another job.
Hmm.
And she said, we actually, like, it was stressful, it was hard, but we also didn't worry because we just went into our emergency stores, and that's what we used. So we didn't have to spend so much at the grocery store.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
then now and then they committed to restocking what they had used, but like, it
Hmm.
was really helpful for them to have that cushion.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know what life is going to throw at you. So that is,
Yeah.
yeah, that is so wonderful. Well, something we were talking about, just development of recipes and things like that. So do you have a tried and true recipe that you are thinking you'd like to share with listeners?
I'd love to. Yeah, there's one recipe actually. I'm happy to send you the link for this. It's called Family Favorite Braised Carrots. And this is a recipe that I had learned about braising years ago, and then I just started making these carrots and then sort of playing with the recipe a little bit. Very simple recipe, very straightforward, but they're so delicious this way. And it has literally become a family favorite. We serve it at all the
Um,
holidays. People request it for birthdays, and now it's at the point where my adult children make it as well.
wow.
We just did. So this year we had a big Thanksgiving at my cousin's house with 24 people,
Oh,
and
wow.
everyone was like, "We're having carrots, right?" And so I love how simple the recipe is, how delicious it is. I also love, it's deeply nourishing because it's
Mm,
got carrots have so many wonderful things, including
mhm,
fiber. And
mhm,
then parsley, which is an amazing booster. It's an herb that is detoxifying and
mm,
supportive and wonderful. And just the flavors of this, it's great hot or cold. So I will send you the
mm.
recipe
Yeah,
for my braised carrots.
that sounds wonderful. And yes, I'll put a link to that so that listeners can find that and enjoy that.
Thank
Mira, it's
you.
been such a pleasure talking to you today, and I just feel like I've learned so much, and there's so much I still want to learn. And you make things like this, which can be very daunting, I think sometimes very accessible. It's like just to hear you talking, it's like easily understood, and so I really appreciate that. I think listeners will really appreciate that as well. So, where can people connect with you online? What's the best place?
Thank you. Yeah, the best place I think is Substack. So it's
Okay.
Mira Dessy, Miradessy.substack.com. And
Mhm.
that's where I do all my writing. I share recipes there. I have my newsletter there. My newsletter is free. Obviously, if you're part of my Substack, you get it every week. And I share, an editorial, something that's on my mind, a couple of food blurbs about, I call it food news you can use,
Yeah,
talking about what's going on in the world of food. So yeah, Substack is the place to be.
that's great. And I'll put a link to that so people can find you. Mira, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming on today. It has been such a pleasure, and I just look forward to maybe more conversations with you soon.
That
So,
sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was really fun to talk with you as well, Betty.
yeah, it was fun. Thank you.